It's Tuck Erie and the Joel Natale Show. We are live from our Kingdom Financial Group studio, and we're excited every month to have a Gannon Inspire interview, visiting with our friends from Gannon University here. And with us today to talk about the Center for Social Concerns at Gannon University, it's Keith Jones Pomeroy. Keith, good to see you. Appreciate you being with us here.
Thanks so much.
I'm glad that you're here. Remind us again about what the Center for Social Concerns does and what it's all about.
Yeah, so our programs run a pretty wide range, but really we're the Center for Community Engagement, trying to get students to be thinking about what their values are in life and then how do they enact those values, particularly as it relates to being global citizens and being socially responsible. And so we do a lot of service projects. We are responsible for doing our big days of service immersion, which is Give Day, where we send out about 1,000 students in the fall, and Day of Caring in the spring semester, where we send out about 500 students to volunteer in the local Erie community, and connecting students with partners all across the university so that they go out and they serve. We also run our alternative break service trips, which is 8 to 10 trips, both domestic and international, that we send out each year. Those are student-led trips that go and work with partners to address some sort of social issue. So I feel like that's the big thing is the coordination and and trying to. I mean, okay, where am I going to send 1,000 people? Yes.
In the fall.
It's a lot of matchmaking. Yes. We open it up to a wide variety of partners, and we go far east as Northeast. We go down to Waterford. We go far into Fairview and Girard.
Are you renting school buses? How do you do transportation?
Yeah, so we work a lot with the EMTA. So EMTA is a great partner for us. We also work with STA, which is another school bus transportation organization. So yeah, in the fall it's a lot of feet on the ground, a lot of logistics, working with a lot of different people, and yeah, college students, faculty, staff, alumni.
Talk about the concept of the physical work is having tangible impact, but what about the intangibles like teamwork and self-fulfillment?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, this is the Center for Social Concerns. We're concerned about a holistic approach, mind, body, spirit, right? I mean,
yeah, our goal isn't just to pick up trash on a Saturday.
Yeah.
It's not just to do these kind of menial tasks. We're trying to create capacity for our partners all across the county. And with that, we also want our students to feel like they're part of a community too. So we don't want them to think about serving for, but serving with their partners and with the neighborhoods. So a lot of the partners that we serve are within this kind of like our West Bayfront community. Mm-hmm. We're sending students out there. They live in our West Bayfront. And so we want them to take a little ownership with saying, this is part of where we live. Erie is where we're studying, but it's also where we're living for 2 to 4 years. And so we want them to take ownership of this community, that they can have a direct impact. And so it's not just this kind of like, oh, I'm going to go serve because it's good, but it's also, I'm actually benefiting my neighbors and my community, and that benefits me as well. So we want them to be thinking about that. A lot of the teams are serving together, so it's a great way to bond. It's a great way.
I was going to say, is there Greek life involved with this?
Greek life, athletics,
different
academic organizations, different major groups will get together too to serve. So yeah, it's a lot of different groups that are volunteering.
Isn't that fun when they probably start to do a little friendly competition, and it's like, hey, we're competing to do good.
Absolutely. Yeah, you get some of those students who are very kind of focused on the tangible. Yeah, how many garbage bags full of trash are we picking up?
Right.
And how do we beat that other team that's over there? So yeah, that's definitely a part of it.
I want you to talk about your alternative break services and how extensive are they? Tell some stories about all that.
Yeah. So again, we do anywhere between 8 to 10. About half of those are within the U.S. So we go to D.C., we go to Detroit. We go to Arizona and the Navajo Nation outside Arizona and New Mexico. And then we also go to Canada, to Mexico, and Guatemala as well. So week long, they're working with partners that some of the partnerships we have, they're let's see, the longest partnership is Merida, Mexico, which the Diocese of Erie, along with Gannon, helped found a partnership there in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
And so they've been sending students to this place in Merida, Mexico for, over 50 years, which is a really cool long-term partnership. So,
well, I think back in my day, I remember the Diocesan Office of Communications, which Monsignor McSweeney, God rest his soul, started up with one of my classmates, Mike Sparks, and they had a little storefront office there. Mm-hmm. But they did a whole documentary going to Mexico with this service project.
That's really
I totally
cool.
remall this now.
I'll have to look that up.
Look.
Really
I mean, there's probably some videotape somewhere.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, so we have these long-term partnerships. Yeah. So the partners help facilitate the experience on the ground. They're the ones who are living in the community, so they know where's safe to go, what they're going to do. They also see it as an opportunity to show students this is what life looks like in this particular village or in this particular city. They coordinate a lot of the logistics, which helps us out a lot.
Sure.
And then we do 2 student leaders who help facilitate all the pre-meetings ahead of time. So we really put a lot of energy in developing and training these student leaders so that they're able to feel equipped to learn how to communicate effectively, learn how to plan, learn how to organize, and learn how to engage differences in personalities, cultures, backgrounds. So we get students from all different majors. We get students from all different walks of life. We've been really intentional to target students so that it really represents the whole student body. And then those 2 student leaders, they lead reflections on the trip too each night. So reflection is a really key component. It's kind of the glue that holds all of it together. And so you're having these experiences. You're often being stretched in both physical ways. So you're doing hard manual labor often during the day, but then also you're experiencing the difficulties of working with homelessness or working with poverty or working with kids who don't have access to health care. And so mentally, emotionally, spiritually, that can be really draining. And the reflections are really geared towards helping the students process what they're seeing and also think about how does this change their values or their perspective on life. Do they want to do anything differently because of that? So we've had students who've changed their majors or changed their career paths.
Really?
Yeah, we got a note from somebody in the fall who was an alum who graduated in 2005, and she did her last semester in college here. She went on a trip to Arizona, right along the border, and learned about what was happening with the border crisis at that time. And because of that trip, she became an immigration lawyer. And so she reached out kind of out of the blue saying, hey, we used to do this when I was a student. I was curious if something like that still happens. And we were still going to a community down there. So it was a great way to connect.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I was going to say the reflection part, the processing is highly important.
It is when we want them to be thinking kind of some of the mundane, like what happened today, happies and crappies, what went well, what didn't go well. That's really common. That kind of scratches the surface. But then we also want them to be thinking about what does it mean to live in a world that's broken, that has these deep inequities. We live in the richest nation in the history of the world, but we have 750,000 people each night who are homeless. Right? They're experiencing homelessness. That is a stain upon our country. And so how do we get students to think about sustainable solutions to these issues? We don't want to give them solutions. We want them to be struggling with it and kind of wrestling with the tensions too. So we really encourage them actually to be pretty uncomfortable on the trip. We encourage them to embrace that difficult conversations, difficult dynamics, and difficult questions, because when they embrace that, they often are learning and they're growing in that space. So we see that as actually part of our mission, is to make you a little uncomfortable so that you can grow and stretch.
We're talking to Keith Jones Pomeroy. He's the director for the Center for Social Concerns at Gannon University. Just the title of your department kind of begs the question: what are we concerned about socially? And better yet, what are these Gen Z 18 to 22-year-olds? What's on their hearts, Keith?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so when we see social concerns, we're inspired. So this was formed back in the 80s. Our center is really a tie to Catholic social teaching.
Yeah.
And so there are some things that the church has particularly kind of passed down around issues of labor and work, issues of access to food, healthcare, family. And so those are things that are in the back of our minds, but we also are open to what are the things that students are passionate about. Mm-hmm. And so if they're passionate about a particular issue, we want to give them the tools to advocate for those spaces. There's a lot of different things that they're interested in, just generally poverty. Homelessness tends to be a pretty hot button issue just because it's so visible, especially here in Erie. Mental health is an issue that generation is very aware of, and access to resources to help those who are struggling with mental health issues is really, really something that they're tied to. They're very connected to issues of LGBTQ plus kinds of sexual identity and orientation. And really, a lot of them come back, though, to dignity and respect, the issues that affect who am I, how do I navigate the world, am I valued, included, and able to advocate for myself.
That makes a lot of sense to me. You know that I mean, you at some point you would want alignment, right, with the whole purpose of the center, but certainly that is the concern part of it it would move from decade and generation to generation.
And we try to take some of so dignity and respect, those are kind of foundational values within the Catholic Church, but also human values that underlie a lot of social issues. And so even though the issues might change in terms of what's more popular per different kind of social group, we can kind of still tie it back to that. Like, how are we treating people with dignity and respect? How are we valuing people? How are we acknowledging them? So talk about issues of homelessness. A lot of students, you ask, like, what is your experience with homelessness? And some students have actually been homeless. They've had that experience. Others, it's, I see somebody who's talking to themselves, I go to the other side of the street. I don't make eye contact. What does that do to you and to the other person when you're not acknowledging their humanity? You're not acknowledging that this is actually a person. And what does that do long-term to someone who constantly feels shut out from society? And so when you can center it on that dignity and respect, you can have lots of opinions of how to solve or address homelessness. But if you don't center on what is the dignity of this individual, is this an actual person? And how are we valuing them too? And how are we showing respect and giving respect in a way that affirms their humanity?
Talk about the draw of this holistic approach, the draw of faith in this current generation, because I'm hearing that for decades we've talked about the rise of the nuns, people not using their faith or not participating actively. That is what I'm reading is that has kind of come to a plateau, and this rising adult generation, the Gen Zs or whatever you want to call them, are more interested in spirituality. They're more interested of plugging in their whole selves. They've kind of rejected the boomers,
institutionalized. Yes,
right?
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. So I would say we still have a lot of the nuns, but in those nuns, the religious nuns, NONES,
yes,
it is there is still a deep value for spirituality in a broad sense that is about how do I make meaning in the world, whether that's crystals or tarot cards. Like this generation is still very spiritual. They're searching, they're seeking, and in our trips we try to help them tie into that. So we're not trying to convert you. We're not trying to get you to change your perspective. We want you to open that and also give you some language to how do you clarify your meaning. And so all of us have values, but if you ask a group of students, what are your core values? They'll say, family, friends, but beyond that, what else do I say? And when you try to help them understand between values, differing values, what are the things that really kind of stand out, then they have more language to talk about that. And then that also gives them clarity to give them maybe direction on their spiritual journey. And so we've also had a lot of our trips have become more increasingly diverse in terms of different spiritual identities too. So this last year we had a variety of very devout Catholic students, a couple Muslim students, some atheist students, some agnostic, and the nuns that are all tied in there together. Some of them are going to a mass for the first time, and they're seeing what a mass looks like in a Mexican or Guatemalan context.
Wow.
We encourage them to do that, even if they're not from that religious background, just to see how does the culture influence religion and vice versa. And like our Detroit trip that's going to be going here next week, they're going to be going to the American Muslim Society to do Friday prayers, the Juma prayers, Friday evening, and talk with some of the leaders there, and to talk about, this is one of the oldest and largest Muslim congregations in the U.S. And so to be able to talk about what does that Muslim identity look like. And again, we have Catholic students, we have Muslim students, and we have non-religious students who are on that trip, but we want them to learn from that pluralistic context.
It's a lot of learning. It sounds like there's going on.
Yes.
It occurs to me with the the significant international population of students there. There is a lot of opportunity for diversity and conversations that could be hugely important to greater society, I would think.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a really exciting thing because we've tried to increase our numbers and advertise this among our international students. And getting them into the trips, we've been also able to get into a lot of our first generation lower income students as well. And that, again, broadens the diversity of our groups. It also makes group dynamics more difficult because if we have a trip that is all OT majors who are going to one place, who all come from a generally similar social, economic background, cultural background, there is a certain sense of like, I can expect a certain homogeneity and easily accessible culture with my group. When you're coming from all different backgrounds, timing and punctuality is very different across different cultures. Communication, so reflection in being vulnerable, that shifts culture to culture too. And so a lot of this is really great experience for our students to learn how to deal with difference, how to function in a team setting where we're not necessarily always on the same page. How do we engage with that difference in a way, again, that shows value, dignity towards the other, and that doesn't just shut it down because it's different.
And finally, tie it all together here. You think about Gannon's mission. You think about its history, 100 years old. Put a bow on it with how the Center of Social Concerns really, flows with the Gannon story, if you will.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of the Gannon story started with Gannon trying to be an accessible university, trying to allow this to be a space for not just the elite of the U.S. to go to college, but also this can be neighborhood kids who are actually coming here and getting an education that allows them to be maybe
it's that whole
mobile.
Archbishop Gannon having the newsboys have a college, right?
Absolutely. So I think we tie into that sense of accessibility and also that tie to the greater common good. And so one of the distinctives about our education, it's not just you're getting a degree so you can go and make money. Like that's some of the language we use around higher education is pay a lot of money, learn a bit to get proficient in this skill set, and then you get a piece of paper that says I get to make more money when I graduate. That is a really narrow view of higher education, and at Gannon we see it much more as, again, like you said, the holistic person. We want them to be thinking about not only how they can be professionally adept and competent, but also what kind of person do you want to be? And how are you serving your community? How are you serving the common good? And so when we take students on these trips, we want them to be serving elsewhere, but we also want to take that impulse to serve back to their home communities. So we want the people who are going and serving on Give Day in September to go on our trips and take that local service, also maybe internationally or further across the U.S. But we also want our students who are going on these external trips to come back and say, now I want to engage in these same issues in my hometown.
You think about it, right on campus, you can be a good friend, a good neighbor.
Yes.
You can love your neighbor here on campus.
Yeah, so we're right now, our Detroit team, they're prepping to go to Detroit to work at a couple community gardens where it's a food desert. Detroit is very deindustrialized. There's a lot of poverty. There isn't a lot of access to local fresh goods. And so they're going to go there and help with a couple of organizations that are doing that. They're also, before they go and then after they go, we're making some connections with local organizations. So the Wild Urban Street, Urban Farm on 7th Street by Seth Seiner, and the 4th Street Farm, which is starting on the east side, run through Groundwork Erie. We're having our volunteers go there ahead of time to see what does this look like in Erie also, because we have issues of food access and produce access. And there's a big push now, both with the Downtown Partnership and others, to do the pay what you can for markets. And so getting our students to do that in Detroit is great. Learn something there and then come back, and guess what? You can engage in that here too.
You can make it happen in Erie.
Yes.
I appreciate it. Keith James Pomeroy, the director for the Center for Social Concerns. We can just keep going here, bro, but thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Another one of our amazing Gannon Inspire interviews. Don't forget the Gannon campaign for the next 100 years. It's at campaign.gannon.edu. More ahead here on Talk Erie.